Indiana basketball falls to UConn 77-57 at the Empire Classic. That one kind of stings.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen each and every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Indiana falls to UConn 77-57 in the Empire Classic at Madison Square Garden in New York City. And this one hurts a little bit. Not because Indiana was ultimately going to win this game or even favored in this game, or the thought was that they were going to win this game. But for most of the game, Indiana played well enough to keep themselves around. They were hanging in this game for the entire first half and the first, 7 to 8 minutes of the second half. We'll break it all down here on Locked On Hoosiers. It's a game where it hurts because at times you played well enough to compete and possibly win. But then down the stretch, everything just fell apart and you lose this by 20. I don't think the score is overall indicative of how Indiana played. I think it's very indicative of how they played the last 8 minutes of the game. I mean, after that, it was done. It was over. But let's break it down a little bit. UConn, the number 5 team in the country, they beat Indiana 77-57. Hoosiers suffer their first loss on the season. And you look at just the team stats for now. We'll get to the player stats in just a second. UConn shot 44% from the field, so nothing crazy, but not bad. Indiana shot 37%, almost 38. That's bad. 17 of 45. You only made 17 shots in this game. 17. In a 40-minute span, you only made 17 shots. That's unacceptable. 3-point percentage, 32% from UConn, 23 from Indiana. You gave up 7 threes on 22 attempts. That's normally not great, but for this Indiana team in particular, that wasn't the reason you lost today. I don't think it was. I know they hit some late and really when it started to get out of hand, but for a lot of this game, Indiana somewhat fixed that. And UConn didn't make all their threes, of course, and didn't make some open ones. But I think Indiana definitely adjusted and did their part and did a whole lot better defending the three in this game compared to what they've done in previous games. Here's a problem. Indiana went 3 of 13 from beyond the arc. They can't shoot threes, and they really can't shoot the basketball. We're going to get to that in just a second as well. Free throws wasn't a huge difference. Both teams made 20. Indiana had 28 attempts compared to UConn's 25. I think that's a good sign. Of course, you'd like to make more, but you both made 20 free throws, so can't really harp on that. Here's what you can harp on, though. The rebounding numbers were atrocious for Indiana. I mean, horrible. Indiana had 22 rebounds for the game. UConn doubled you at 44. 44 rebounds compared to your 22 for the Hoosiers. And the worst part was 15 of those 44 for the Huskies were offensive rebounds, which led to putback dunks, putback shots, foul line attempts, and everything in between. Indiana got bullied in this game. I mean, bullied in this game. And because of that, you see a 20-point difference, right? You see a 20-point differential on the final score. Now, again, do I think Indiana got beat by 20 points for most of the game? No, I don't. I really don't think so. But down the stretch, yes. And again, we know why. We all watched the game. But man, there's so many things that, if Indiana could fix, right? If Indiana could just make better, you can see the potential in this team. You can see the talent is there. They just haven't put it all together yet. Some more numbers. The assist numbers were lopsided. Once again, UConn had 19. Indiana had 6. Turnovers weren't a huge differential. Indiana, believe it or not, actually won the turnover battle, 14-12. UConn had 14. Indiana had 12. Both teams had 21 fouls. And again, we'll get to that too. It was a game you could tell it was the number 5 team in the country versus a team that's trying to figure it out. Going into it, a big question mark was Xavier Johnson going to play? And he started. And health-wise, he looked fine, right? Looked fine health-wise, but got in foul trouble early and was basically a non-factor. He was pretty much a non-factor in the first half. He made some plays in the second half, but the foul trouble really stalled him from doing anything in this game because he's your starting guy. He's your go-to leading dude on offense to keep things running, and he didn't play because he got in foul trouble. Some were good, some were not. Then in the first half, it was Kel'el Ware, right? Ware was doing some nice things. He was getting to the line. He was getting inside. He was making some moves. Disappeared in the second half. Your best player today for Indiana was Malik Raneau, by far. He was your leading scorer with 18. He was your highest energy guy, I think. He was your second leading rebounder with a whopping 3. It just doesn't make any sense. He had the best shot percentage today. And Malik Raneau played a really good game again. But here's the problem. Indiana scored 57 points in 40 minutes. You're not going to win any basketball games doing that at all. You scored 57 points in a 40-minute span. It's got to get better. It has to get better. Lack of transition, lack of offensive production, and the inability to shoot threes for Indiana in a game like this where it seemed like you were down by 7 to 12 points the entire time. It's tough to come back. It's tough to come back in a game where you can't shoot threes. If you're a team that can't consistently knock it down or even be a threat from outside, you're not going to come back from double-digit deficits, right? You're not going to do it. So I think there is still so much to fix with this team. There's a lot of things to grow from here. But I think Indiana got better in this game. I really do. I think Indiana got better in this game and can take some things away in positives and in negatives in a 77-57 loss against the number 5 team in the country, who I know didn't have one of their best players, but that is a defending national championship team. Indiana got better today, but they have a lot of work to do. Coming up, we'll talk about the likes and dislikes, a lot of it on offense. On the dislike side, I liked what I saw on defense, plus a guy coming off the bench that I think played his best game so far and could be a really big impact for Indiana moving forward. We'll talk about that in just a second. But today's episode is brought to you by listening.com. College students, listen up. There's this incredible app called listening.com, which can take any academic paper, PDF, or class material and turn it into an audiobook. It can read math equations, technical words, and complicated documents. It knows to skip all the citations, footnotes, and references and lets you jump straight to the chapter or section you want to listen to. If you're like me, I like to listen to it. You got to do other things while you're listening to it rather than having to sit down and actually read the physical book. I don't know. Technology today allows you to do that, and you can do that with listening.com. It even has a one-click note-taking button where it automatically puts the last 10 seconds into a notepad, so you don't have to type notes while you listen. Best of all, if you use the link listening.com/lockedon, you'll be able to get your first 3 weeks for free. How about that? So go ahead and give it a try. Usually it's 2 weeks free, But right now, you can get an extra free week when you go to listening.com/lockedon. That's LOCKEDON at listening.com. Indiana falls to UConn 77-57 in the Empire Classic. They'll play in the third place game with Texas or Louisville, and that's going to be a tough game. But in this game in particular, there were a lot of things I disliked, and there were some things that I liked. We'll start with the things that I disliked, and most of it was on offense. Right? We've talked in the first few games this season about a lot of the defensive struggles with giving up the three ball, leaving shooters wide open, rebounding. And the rebounding thing was still an issue today. And I think Indiana was just outsized. I mean, you had Kel'el Ware. Of course, he's your 7-footer, but he was matched up, right? UConn had one of their own. And Mackenzie Mgbako is still not being a force inside on either side of the ball. So you just got outsized today. And a lot of times out-hustled. And that's something I did not like. But defensively, you defended the three a lot better. UConn had some open shots, and teams are going to get open looks, but I saw a lot better rotations today for Indiana on the three-point line than what we've seen in the first few games. So that is something I liked, and other than just getting out-hustled at times, which is not okay, but defensively, Indiana did their job. They did their job. I know UConn scored 77, but a lot of that was late when they pulled away and the game was seemingly in hand. My dislikes are offensively, which I know doesn't come to a shock to any Hoosier fans. 57 points in 40 minutes of basketball is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. There's a couple of reasons why this happened in this game. Xavier Johnson didn't hardly get to play because of the foul trouble in the first half and just inconsistency in the second half. Kel'el Ware had a solid first half. He got to the free throw line more than anything and then disappeared in the second half. I know they said that on the TV broadcast, and I think it's true because UConn finally realized, okay, we're just going to put a big guy on him, and he proved he could not just go straight at a guy his size, right? He proved that today. Malik Raneau was your best player offensively. He had a wonderful first half. He had a wonderful game. 18 points on 7 of 9 shooting, 4 of 4 from the free throw line. Also had 3 rebounds, an assist, a steal, 3 blocks, did have 3 turnovers. But he had 18 points. He was your leading scorer. There was a point where he had 17 of Indiana's 34 points. What are we doing, right? That is not okay. That's not acceptable. And look, I'm not saying anything bad about Malik Raneau. He did a wonderful job. And I love seeing that from him. He kind of got it going against Wright State, right? And he needs to be that every time. But here's the problem. We've talked about this. Indiana doesn't have a secondary scorer. It's so far, it's been one person each night. It's been Kel'el Ware at times. It's been Malik Raneau at times. And that's pretty much been it. Xavier Johnson, maybe. But you had Raneau with 18. You had Ware with 11. Galloway with 10 somehow. I don't know how he got there. He did shoot 4 of 8. Just seemed like they weren't super timely points. But then Mackenzie Mgbako, he had 2 points again. And Xavier Johnson had 4. And again, I know he was in and out of the game all night. And off the bench, you had a whopping 12 points. 5 from Anthony Walker and 7 from CJ Gunn, who I'm going to talk about in just a second. Who else is going to score? Indiana does not have a secondary scorer because in the second half, after Malik Raneau had a wonderful first half, UConn, as championship coaches and championship teams do, they decided, let's just double up Malik Raneau. So every time he touched the basketball, anywhere inside the three-point line, they brought a double team. Indiana couldn't get out of it, and nobody else could score. Nobody else could score. The offense stalled out. They started turning the ball over. They took bad shots. I know Kel'el Ware can make three-pointers, but shooting a 3 in the first 7 seconds of the shot clock is not good offense. Mackenzie Mgbako shooting 18-foot jumpers. Again, I know he can make them, but that's not good offense. Who else is going to score when the defense shuts down Malik Raneau, or when the defense puts another 7-footer on Kel'el Ware? Where's it going to come from? I haven't seen it from Xavier Johnson this year. I know he's coming off the injury, and he looked pretty good, thankfully, today. So we'll give him a pass. But Trey Galloway had 10. I need him to be more aggressive, and I need guys off the bench to be more aggressive as well. When anybody off the bench comes in right now, it just stalls. Everything just stops. That's not okay. And so Indiana's got to find somebody, somehow, some way to help with this offense, because I'm just going to say this right now, and I truly mean this. For the rest of this season for Indiana basketball, if Malik Raneau is your leading scorer, that is an issue. That is a problem. I love Malik. He is playing really good basketball, and he was the only reason Indiana was in this game today. But if he is your leading scorer night in and night out, you're going to be in trouble. I'm not saying he can't be here and there, but Malik Raneau should not be your leading scorer night in and night out. I don't think that's his role. And he can't carry this team that far. He tried. And I think he's a wonderful player. And there will be games where he is. But he can't be that every single night. He's got to have some help. Got to have help from Kel'el Ware and Trey Galloway and Xavier Johnson. And my God, Mackenzie Mgbako, do something. Right? He has so much to learn. It's unbelievable. And I could do a whole show on the things he's got to learn and get better on. And we've harped on it enough, so I don't want to right now. But here is something I liked. This is offensively, defensively, just in the game itself. A guy on the bench that I really, really was impressed with today, and I know his stats may not show it, but CJ Gunn came in and played really well today in this game against UConn. He played really, really well in the game against UConn. He was only 2 of 7, and he was 0 of 3 from downtown, but 3 of 4 from the free throw line. He grabbed a board, had 4 steals on defense, and had 7 total points. And I'm not really talking on the stat sheet for CJ Gunn. His energy was really, really good. His effort was better than most on this team against UConn. And he's going to be a really special player. If he can continue to kind of develop and get comfortable and find his role coming off the bench, I think CJ Gunn, it could be a really, really important piece to this Indiana team. I liked what I saw from him today. He played with heart. He played with effort. He played with passion, something not every person on this team could say. I really like CJ Gunn. And you noticed when Xavier Johnson went out with the fouls, it was Gabe Cupps who came in, and he had a young freshman day. He got blown by a couple times on defense, didn't do anything on offense. And I like Gabe Cupps a lot. This was a game where he just kind of got exposed a little bit. CJ Gunn can be that guy. I like him a lot. So if there's anything that I did like, I liked CJ Gunn. I liked Malik Raneau. But man, you got to find some points. You got to find a secondary scorer. I just don't know where it's going to come from, because we've seen already defenses, when one person steps up and becomes the guy in the first half, they shut him down, whether it be Raneau or Ware or whatever. Who else is going to step up? Who's it going to be? Indiana's got to figure that out. They got to find out offensive rotations. Oh, and one more thing. Another dislike. On the defensive side, where is the communication? This team does not talk at all. They don't talk at all. And that's a big problem when you get to the losing shooters on defense, right? Losing three-point shooters and losing backdoor cuts, and honestly just leaving guys wide open. How many times did you see in this game where UConn would set a high ball screen and 2 Indiana defenders would go with the basketball and nobody would go with the pick, right? Nobody would go with the roll. Or even just in a handoff, Indiana wouldn't communicate if they were switching or staying. So then 2 guys would go with the ball and there'd be a guy wide open. That happened so many times in this game. Indiana has to fix that. And that's on head coach Mike Woodson. Get on them. Make them talk. Make them tell you everything they're doing in practice. When you're running plays and running drills, make them talk. I would. We had to do that. I remember doing that growing up playing basketball when we didn't communicate. We had to say everything out loud, screaming in the gym what we were doing. And I think Indiana needs something like that because they got burned so many times today because they didn't talk. They just didn't tell each other what was going on. You got to help your brother out. So that's something I didn't like as well. Lots of dislikes in this game. There are some likes in this game. And I think, and I said this earlier, Indiana got better. And there was a turning point in this game that I want to talk about in just a second, where Indiana could have cut it to 5 or 4, and it ended up being a double-digit lead for UConn, and they just kind of turned back and never looked back, I should say. We'll bring that up coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Love FanDuel. I use it all the time. If you're not using it, you should be, especially with the NFL season, because right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and much more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And before we get to some more content, I want to tell you about some 24-hour content with all of our networks here at Locked On, because we have launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Really, really cool thing. It cycles through different shows, different hosts, different topics. It is really, really unique. And so go check it out. Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Give them a subscribe. Turn on the bell. I mean, they're live all the time. So be sure you go and check that out. It is really, really cool. Indiana falls to UConn 77-57 in the Empire Classic, and no rest for the weary, as they've got to turn around and play another tough game, playing in the third place game against either Texas or Louisville. This is a reaction right after the game, so not aware of what the matchup is yet. But either way, going to be a tough matchup. And Indiana has to find a way to bounce back in this game, because what hurts so much about the UConn loss was late in the second, well, I should say almost midway through the second half, Indiana had a chance. They were still in this game. And it was in that 12-minute mark where Indiana was playing defense, right? Around 12 and a half minutes in the second half. Indiana was on the defensive end. They forced a turnover on UConn. They were down by 7, forced a turnover, and were off and running. It had a chance to cut the lead to either 4 with a 3 or 5 with a 2. It was Xavier Johnson who got the basketball. And he turns and he starts running and gets his pocket picked. UConn scores. UConn gets the ball back. UConn scores. They get fouled. And just like that, you're down by 9 instead of 5 or 4. Then on the missed and one free throw, UConn gets the basketball back. They go up by double digits. And that was it. That was the turning point in the game. It was over after that point. Indiana had kept their own. They had fought their way to that point and had a chance. They had a chance. And it was at that moment where UConn wanted it more. They never stopped. And shout out to the UConn guards, man. Those guys can play. Those guys can absolutely play. And they owned Indiana today. They won. They beat Indiana's guards today. And they never gave up on a basketball, whether it was on a rebound or on a steal and transition. And I know, again, they talked about that on the broadcast too. They never gave up. And I'm not saying it was this way for the entire 40 minutes, but in the moments that mattered, UConn just played a little harder. UConn wanted it a little bit more. And that can't happen. That can't happen. Because I think we can all agree that Indiana has the talent. They had the talent to be on that floor today in Madison Square Garden against UConn. They had the talent to be on the floor. They just couldn't put it together yet. And you're going to get exposed when you play a national championship team like UConn. You're going to get exposed. And that's what happened. Overall, though, I'm proud of this Indiana team because, yes, you got beat by 20, but you were in this ballgame. Until that 12.5-minute moment that I just talked about, Indiana had a chance. And guess what? I felt that way. I felt they had a chance. It's like, man, if you can put another run or two together, you're going to take this thing down to the end. Unfortunately, things kind of fell apart. Indiana got kind of desperate, I guess is the best way to put it, taking bad shots. Not great effort down the stretch, and UConn's depth really, really got you at the end. And so how does Indiana bounce back? Well, you're going to be playing another tough team on Monday. You're going to be playing in the third-place game back there in Madison Square Garden. So that is one way to look at it. Indiana didn't shoot the ball well. At least you're playing in the same gym, right? You're playing on the same rims. You get another look at them. And hopefully in this very short turnaround, you can focus on some things that you need to work on. Find out how you can score the basketball. Who wants it? Who's going to step up and be the guy to score and get this offense moving a little bit? And once all of that comes together, if Indiana can play like they did today defensively against UConn, then you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine, I think. Because the defensive effort I saw for 30 minutes of the game, 35 minutes even maybe, that is going to be plenty enough for Indiana to be in basketball games just like this. And for it to be the fourth game of the season and Indiana to hold their own for the most part, right, until it all fell apart, I think that's something to hang your hat on. I'm not saying it's okay to lose. I'm not saying that at all because I hate losing. I hate losing. And I hate losing winnable games. And I don't think this was truly a winnable game for Indiana at this point. But I think it went better than what we thought. I mean, I had a lot of you tweeting at me and on the comments and everything saying Indiana was going to lose by 30 or 40 and it would have been over by the first half. And it wasn't. This was a 7-point game at the half. 7-point game. And Indiana had a chance down the stretch. They just couldn't pull it off. So, Indiana has to bounce back. You got to pick yourself up off the mat, and you have to play another tough team that's going to punch you in the mouth, that is going to be better than you, more than likely, not more talented, but I think at this point, just better than you. So how do you kind of, this is a really good chance to see what this team's made of. Do they come out sloppy on Monday? Do they come out unenergized on Monday and just, whatever, we're here, we'll just take our loss and go back to Bloomington? Or do they come out fighting for Indiana? Do they come out fighting for head coach Mike Woodson? Do they come out fighting for a really good crowd that's there in New York City? I'm curious because guess what? I don't know. I have no idea. We're going to find out. We're going to find out on Monday. And if that's the case, if they come out and play just sloppy and unmotivated and just nonchalant, don't give a crap, then there's an issue. Then there's a problem. And that is a time to stress and concern and be worried like, oh no, right? But if they come out motivated and fight, even if they lose, if they play another good game and can at least show some progress, and I know it's tough to make progress in such a quick turnaround in less than 24 hours, but showing a little fight and some heart, I think is going to be something Indiana has to have in the third place game of the Empire Classic on Monday. Indiana loses to UConn 77-57. I know it's tough, but I think there are good things coming, Hoosier fans. I really do. I think good things are coming. But this is a crucial stretch that the Hoosiers are about to go through, and I'm excited to be along on the ride, and I'm glad that all my everydayers are here you are here with me as well. And so really, really looking forward to it. We'll have episodes coming out every day. I know it's Thanksgiving week, but hey, the grind doesn't stop. We'll have episodes for you each and every day because that's what we do here at the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. And I do appreciate you making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen each and every day. Be sure you like and subscribe the video. It helps me out. Or like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. The video, this one in particular, helps me out a ton. If you're on any podcasting platform, be sure you subscribe on there and turn on all the notifications so you know when episodes go live. We'll continue to do reaction videos. We'll do some more previews. We'll do breakdowns and just talk the biggest storylines in Indiana athletics. So I'm excited about it. I think there's good things happening, and I'm glad that you're here and a part of it. Until next time, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.